Welcome to this week's episode of the Andy Beshear Podcast. I am excited about this week. We have one of the most brilliant political minds in the business, Jim Messina. Jim ran Barack Obama's 2012 re-election campaign and was one of the key strategists that helped pass the Affordable Care Act, ensuring no one can get kicked off their coverage for a pre-existing condition. Our discussion is going to talk about the real impact that good public policy can make and why it's important to elect good people to office. Then you're going to hear my conversation with the Johns. We're going to cover a lot of topics, from the cost of housing to the Trump administration's decision to not fully fund SNAP. Those are food benefits to people who would otherwise go hungry. And you're even going to hear about my turn this Halloween as Mr. Rogers. Then Lila is going to come full circle and give us a quiz on Gen Z lingo. So all of you out there, get ready. We're going to see how many episodes you've seen and how well you can do on this quiz. Remember, you can download the Andy Beshear Podcast on all major platforms, but please subscribe to our YouTube at Andy Beshear Podcast. Let's get to this great episode. And now on the Andy Beshear Podcast, a very special guest that we are excited to have. Jim Messina has been called one of the most brilliant political minds of our lifetime. He served in the Obama administration as Deputy Chief of Staff. He ran the 2012 re-election campaign that's been held up as a standard about getting ahead of technology and winning based on what's next. He also had a pivotal role in securing the votes for the Affordable Care Act, something that's changed the lives of millions of Americans for the better. Jim, welcome to the podcast.
Governor, thanks for having me.
So when you're described as one of the most brilliant political minds, I think a lot of folks would assume that you somehow started in the halls of Harvard or in the vicinity of Washington, D.C., but you cut your teeth politically on where you're coming from today, and that's Montana. Tell us about that.
Yeah, look, when I was 11 years old, I wrote a paper, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I said either the starting quarterback of the Denver Broncos, which John Elway had that job locked, or I wanted to be the president's campaign manager. And I started at home in Montana. I went to the University of Montana, started working on campaigns in college, and ended up running city council races, elected the mayor when I was still in college, and ran state legislative races. And, you and I have talked about this in the past, but, most of the wisdom out there in politics doesn't come from Washington, D.C. And I learned in running races in very tough red states like Montana and North Dakota that, people really want to have real conversations. They want to sit down and talk about the issues. And it really taught me grassroots campaigns. One of the things that made me sort of infamous in politics in Montana, I invented this thing called the Bacchus Burger Bonanza for Max Bacchus, former senator from Montana. And we went to every red county in the state and threw a free barbecue, hamburgers and beer. And so the only thing you got to do is come have a burger and have a conversation with Max. And in every county where we did one of those, we carried the election. And it just started to teach me that, people don't want to be partisan all the time. They want to just have a conversation. And it was a great sort of beginning teachings of what Barack Obama would later kind of master.
So at 11 years old, you know that if you can take the job from John Elway, you'll take it. I'm still hoping to be an NFL quarterback. But at 11, you want to be the president's campaign manager. What's your why? What grabbed you at that age where you said, this is what I want to do in life?
Governor, I grew up super poor. Mother raised four of us kind of on her own. But I was a reader. I'd sit in the back and just read. And I fell deeply in love with politics very, very young, and realized that if I wanted to help my family, if I wanted to take care of people who were, like my mother, that politics could do that and that people made decisions that affected people's lives. We were food stamp kids. I did free hot school lunch, all those things. And I understood probably earlier than I should have that that was because of politics. And I decided to go do that. And fortunately, when I figured out I couldn't throw a football, it's all I've ever wanted to do.
So, having grown up that way, having wanted to make that impact, what did it mean to you to be able to get the Affordable Care Act passed, to know that so many more people were going to be able to afford health care coverage, that expanded Medicaid in states could do what they did in Kentucky, cover 600,000 Kentuckians that previously didn't have coverage?
Well, you understand this because when you're an elected official, you got to make choices. And on the first day of the Obama White House, before the inaugural balls, we sat down in the West Wing and had a big old, very nice fight about what issue to do first. And at the very end, President Obama, on his first day in office, stood up and said, "Look, I've been campaigning for president for 2 years, and none of you want me to do health care because you know how hard it is, and 10 presidents have tried it. But I know that it's the one thing that could make people's lives better. And so we're going to do healthcare." And he looked at me and said, "Messina, how long to get it through the Senate?" And I said, "No more than 6 months." 14 months later, I walked. Yeah, it was an estimate. Thank you. Um, he was shooting hoops, and I walked to him, and I got to say, "Congratulations, Mr. President. We have the votes to pass universal health care in America." And there's a picture of him holding this basketball and me crying like a 11-year-old kid.
That's pretty special. The impact that that's had, as you know, has been tremendous. But I wouldn't be governor if that hadn't passed. One of the reasons that I ran for this job is my dad was governor when you all passed the Affordable Care Act. He got to implement it in Kentucky. And I'll never forget the day a woman walked onto an elevator that we were on, burst into tears, and told a story about how she was alive today because that passed, because the companies couldn't claim her cancer was a pre-existing condition, how she was able to get the treatments she needed, and that she was cancer-free. Talk about a living, breathing example that government can truly help people.
I mean, it goes all the way. You're exactly right. During the 14-month campaign, I met so many people across the country who told those stories. 38 million people, including my wife, had pre-existing conditions and couldn't get insurance or was thrown off insurance. In the course of one law, none of those people could be discriminated against. All four of my nieces and nephews were chip kids who, got health insurance because of a government program. That was, yeah. Yeah, there you go. And, all those things. I remember, when Vice President Biden was standing next to the president and had those infamous words, "This is a big effing deal." It really was. And I remember the signing ceremony, Governor. There was no one who wasn't crying because everyone in that room, everyone in America had someone that they knew who'd been thrown off an insurance plan, who couldn't get coverage, who had to split a pill down the middle because they couldn't afford it. It's one of those things that you realize why you and I do what we do, which is to make people's lives better.
So President Obama gets elected, and one of your first roles is helping him fill out his cabinet. Tell us a little bit about what that's like, because it almost seems like you're picking a kickball team, though you're the only team, and you can choose anyone in America.
Yeah, everyone becomes your friends real quick. Like, um, on the other hand, this very wise politician who's sadly passed, Harry Reid, said, when I got that job to help the president, I ran the personnel for the transition, and then I was White House Deputy Chief of Staff. And he said to me, "Messina, you're going to realize something very quickly." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Well, whoever you pick thinks you waited too long to do it, and everyone who you didn't pick is going to hate you for the rest of their lives." And that's maybe a little bit of hyperbole. But on the other hand, you got to put these amazing people in these jobs who were going to go change the world. I remember, the environment's obviously a big issue, and we put this woman, Lisa Jackson, into EPA, who probably did more to solidify a Clean Drinking Water Act than anyone in America. No one's heard of her, but she did that, and it's because she got that job, and she had a president who would trust her.
So in 2012, you lead the, well, before 2012, you lead the reelection campaign. And you did a lot of things that had never been done before that were innovative. Maybe at the time, the most advanced technological campaign, though I guess every next one should be if you're doing that correctly. Tell us how you went about that, because you did a lot of meetings to find out truly what was going to be the cutting edge.
Well, it kind of started on day one. On Christmas Day 2010 in Hawaii, I was with the president for his Christmas vacation, and they called and said, President wants to take you for a swim in the ocean. And for those of you listening on the podcast, you can't see, but I'm not the kind of pale complexion you should take in the ocean. And I was like, nope, nope, bad idea. And they're like, well, he's the leader of the free world. He'd like you to come swim. You'll go swim. And we're out there, and he said, Messina, you're leaving the White House. And I said, well, I just helped pass universal health care. Why are you firing me? And he said, no, no, you're going to go run the reelect. And we were sitting there kind of paddling in the ocean. And I said, I just need one favor. I need you to promise me we're not going to run the same campaign you did last time. And he said, Jim, what are you talking about? You know, I did win that one. And I was like, yeah, but to quote Sarah Palin, you're not the hopey changey guy anymore. You have a record. We're in the worst economic situation the country had been in since the Depression. And we're going to have to kind of go run a new kind of campaign. And he said, okay, but I want to make sure it's about the grassroots. And so I went on this grand tour, kind of went all over the world and interviewed people, listened to people, learned from people who were doing new things. I sat with Steve Jobs weeks before he died. And he talked to me about this new thing he just invented called the iPhone, and how you could put all the voter file on the iPhone and people could have an entire campaign on this thing. I sat with Steven Spielberg, and he talked to me about narrative and how you build a narrative, and how the first time Barack Obama was, as he said, like the 1965 Rolling Stones. And the second time, you know, he was someone that everyone has seen their concert many times. And we're going to have to do something to make it new and sexy. And so I kind of went and spent a bunch of time in front of a whiteboard and tried to dream up how you did this again, and how you did it in a way that was new but true to who he was. And we were able to kind of do that.
So when you think about technology and the pace of technology changing,
Yep.
how different now do you think each election is, especially the presidential election every 4 years, with social media especially seeming to make that change almost exponential about how and on what platforms you communicate?
Yeah, this is something I'm obsessed with, and I'm sort of upset about. You know, so we've helped elect 15 presidents and prime ministers around the world in the past few years, and you know, to your point, it is just changing in light seconds. And you know, after 2012, Democrats had this massive lead on how to communicate, on how to use voter files, on how to use social media. You know, we were the first campaign to ever use a tweet. We made Facebook kind of politically relevant. And right now, Democrats are in the wilderness. Republicans have a massive advantage. And part of it is we've sort of put our heads in the sand and said, we know how to do this. We don't need to innovate. Part of it is the rise of TikTok and the issues around TikTok. Um, but also part of it is, you know, we had generational leaders who weren't technology first, and they didn't communicate that way. And it is one of the challenges that I am most worried about. I recently saw this bubble graph about who the biggest influencers are in politics in the United States, and there were 41 red bubbles and under 10 blue bubbles of people who had big share of voice. And that is just unsustainable long term for this party and this movement.
Right now, we've got a government shutdown going on, and I know that's one of the most fraught political moments for any party.
Yep.
As This is going to be coming out, they may have reached a resolution, but if you were advising the Democratic leadership of the House and the Senate right now, what would be your best message?
Well, look, I've been on both sides of this. Before I went to the White House, I was chief of staff for both members of the Senate and members of the House. And I was the guy who threatened to shut down the government. And then for Obama, I was the guy who had to kind of negotiate to keep the government open. And what you realize and what I hope that the party is doing right now is using these technologies that you and I were just talking about to communicate very real stories of the effects on this. You've been amazing at this in your home state about making sure people understood. I'm not just sucking up because I'm on your show. I've seen you talk about the tariffs. And I've seen you talk about what the tariffs do to Kentucky bourbon, which is something that I care very deeply about. Uh, and those personal anecdotes, interviewing people who actually affect it, so much right now feels like we are a Washington driven party in a time where the country doesn't like Washington. And we want everything to be about this negotiation in Washington. And if you are the swing voters who have an average of 2.6 jobs, think about politics 4 minutes a week, all you care about is how this is for your family. You're going through a tough time and you want to know how this affects you. And we seem to have decided that our job is to be the defenders of Washington instead of the defenders of the people, or at least tell those stories.
That has me thinking about the soybean farmers, and we'll see what deal or non-deal that China makes. But we got a ton of soybean farmers. They do corn and beans and rotate them in Kentucky, but then all through the Midwest, and they vote predominantly, but not solely, Republican. But you
Yep.
hear them speaking out when some people might not expect it. Why? Because their livelihood, their families are on the line.
Boy, it's really true. My nearest neighbor is 3 miles away, and I live in ranch country. And I think Barack Obama got 30 some percent in my county. But yet these ranchers are incredibly upset on the tariffs. And last week, the president of the United States told them they have to get over it. They didn't understand. And you have to personalize that story. You don't have Jim Messina on social media. You put the rancher who says, "Hey, I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican, I'm a rancher." And this is what these policies do to your cost of getting a burger. Make it very, very specific. I say all the time that if Democrats win the economic argument, they win the presidential race. If they lose the economic argument, they lose. And right now, Republicans have a 12-point lead on the economy, even with Donald Trump doing some of the things that you and I know are bad policy, in part because we don't have an economic message that normal voters understand. And until we fix that, I don't care how unpopular Donald Trump gets, we will not be as successful as we need to be if we don't have our own economic narrative.
Do you think that Democrats should be talking about the American dream? It's half of America thinks it's no longer true that if you work hard and play by the rules that you can succeed, and that is kind of at the heart of how we look as a family at our economic well-being.
I recently watched this polling presentation from a very good Democratic pollster who said we need to stop talking about the American dream. We're seen as out of touch when we say that. I think that's exactly wrong. And I think the reason why it's wrong is because you need to see and hear the voter. This is the first generation in American history that no longer believes their children will be better off than they are. But we have to be the party that challenges and says, we understand that's your challenge, but we also don't think that's okay. We're angry too. And there's things we can do to help you achieve that dream. And we're going to be the party that does that. And if we do that, we will go back to winning national elections. And if we don't, I promise you we won't.
How big of an impact do you think that the big, I got to call it ugly bill, is going to have, because I certainly see it in terms not just of healthcare, but how it's going to impact rural communities economically, with the largest payroll in many communities, is either going to fully go under or shed a whole lot of its jobs and the revenue flowing through those counties.
Boy, I think it's going to be huge. And I think this Medicaid cuts, you've been outspoken on this as well, is a ticking time bomb for the Republican Party. In 2005, when we had we didn't have the House, we didn't have the Senate, we didn't have the White House, kind of the last time we were where we are now, the Republicans tried to privatize Social Security and Medicare. And the House and Senate Democrats decided to make that the fight of the 2006 election. And they made a very questionable decision, Governor, and hired me to run the campaign. I remember going to the House and Senate caucus and saying, we're just not going to talk about anything other than this. And a year and a half later, we took the House, we took the Senate, and set up the White House. And, 82% of Americans approve of the Medicaid program, and they just put $1 trillion cut into it. If we can't sell that, if we can't sell, to your point, why in these rural communities this is going to get rid of healthcare, then we don't deserve to win. And so I think it's absolutely an issue that we can win on, these rural hospitals, these rural economics, some of these programs you just talked about for soybean and farmers. But we have to personalize it, and we can't make it about a DC program. We have to make it about, if you're in X county, this will make your life much, much worse.
I always talk about that in terms of the signing in the Rose Garden isn't real to people anymore. The vote on the floor isn't real to anyone anymore. We've got to be standing in front of that hospital that's just closed, where you used to be able to see a doctor in an hour. And now you got to drive to a big city, maybe even see that same doctor there, and take a whole day off work.
Boy, you're exactly right. And when you look at why we're in the minority in the House, when we look at the red states we used to have Senate seats in that we no longer have Senate seats in, it's because we are historically underperforming in these rural counties. We're actually doing pretty good in the cities. We're doing better in the suburbs. But we are just getting historically slaughtered in these communities that you and I are talking about. And if we just do a little bit better, make the case.
We call that not red to blue, because it's not going to go blue, but red to pink. Do
Oh, I
5%
love it.
better in the toughest of counties, and that also, I think, makes you a better candidate and better in the office, because you better understand people's plight, most of which isn't all that partisan. But as we've got you for a couple more minutes, obviously you're a brilliant guy. What do you do to relax, to turn your brain off?
Fly fishing is I just got back from Canada fly fishing. And then I do a little hiking, and then I might be the largest college football fan in the world. The University of Montana Grizzlies, currently second in the Division II FCS polls, and then the SEC. You're an SEC country. I know Kentucky's having a tough year, but Stoops will figure it out.
Well, good. What when you go out to dinner, what type of restaurant do you like the most?
Oh my God. If I could eat steak every night, maybe it's because I'm a Montanan, but I like steak. And then I like to go, whenever I'm doing a campaign, I like to go sit in a bar and just talk to folks, have a beer, and just see what people are saying out there. Get off the TV and going. And I think if you go into a rural bar and have a conversation with people, you'll learn more than any focus group you and I can be a part of.
When you're in that bar, what is your favorite Kentucky bourbon?
Oh, Buffalo Trace.
Okay, but the Buffalo Trace itself, or one of the products there?
It's a great question. I like the bourbon. That's the one I drink the most. But you and I have a mutual friend in Matthew Barzin, who every once in a while sends me some nice Woodford that is not a bad thing. And but if it's brown, I'll drink it.
Outside of politics, what's another talent that you have that people might not know about? We call it our secret superpower.
I once was a world-class runner, long distance. Uh-huh. Which, as you know, in a campaign, that is a very helpful thing. The hard part of campaigns is how long they are, and realizing when you have to sit there in the pack and when you have to sprint at the end. I'm no longer, I turned 56 this week, so I don't think I'm going to break any records, but get me out into a mountain and let me do a little hiking with my wife, and I'll be the happiest guy you know.
Jim, this has been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on the Andy Bashir podcast.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for doing this. We need more people doing this kind of thing, and I hope a lot of electeds follow you.
Now, on the Andy Bashir podcast, our segment, My Conversation with the Johns. This is about processing the issues of the day following the stories of not just the week, but of the last several months, and hopefully giving you an opportunity to think about what you believe in each and every one of these stories, and then preparing yourself for the week ahead. So, guys, are you ready?
Ready.
We have a lot to talk about.
We do. Let's start with something that we're all concerned about, and that's people having enough to eat. During this shutdown, the Trump administration initially announced that they were going to be the first administration ever during a shutdown not to fund SNAP. They said they didn't have the legal authority, even though the USDA on its website had said that they did before. But I filed a lawsuit along with a number of other AGs and governors. Cities filed a separate lawsuit, and two separate federal judges came to the conclusion that, yes, there was this authority. One of the judges said you can do one of two things. You can partially fund SNAP benefits through a contingency account, or you can even move money from another place and fully fund them. I think the second judge said you can and should fully fund them. As where we are today, filming this on a Monday, the Trump administration said they were going to partially fund the benefits.
So we've talked about this before. I think this is a completely nonpartisan issue. Our people should not starve. The fact that we're fighting about this, I know it's because of the shutdown, but it's truly a partisan issue. And it's today, I'm glad that they're going to partially fund this, but still, what happens now? So are they going to go back to the states, divvy it up? I guess there might be a formula. Maybe we don't know yet. And then also, you're still having to step in. And at most, what is that going to give you? A week, 2 weeks of funding? People and new people for this month, I guess they're going to get nothing based on this amount being supplemented.
Yeah, you point out two challenges. Number one, these are people that are already facing hunger. And so cutting what little they get, only getting part of it, is problematic. The other piece is it's delayed. Now we're here, I think Saturday is when some of the benefits at least would normally go out. It's Monday, and as of this moment, the states don't have the tables. That's what the federal government has to send to them, to send the information for the benefits to start flowing. So states are doing different things. In Kentucky, I declared a state of emergency. We've got $5 million going out to help our food banks, but this is something that doesn't have to happen.
And I don't think the food pantries can keep up. These lines must be outrageous.
And of all the things I thought we were ever going to talk about on the podcast, feeding people.
Right.
At the very basis of just how do you take care of those in need? Because these are going to be families, seniors, veterans. It's everyone who's applied for these and had them awarded.
What I love about this podcast is even though we have different positions on different things, different parties, when you're friends, you can actually get down to hunger's wrong. Yeah. And we ought to be doing something about it.
It's also common sense. Take care of our people.
Yeah. So this isn't the only basic need that's impacting a lot of Americans. We also have housing.
And housing is something that we've all seen. I mean, the barrier to be able to afford a house now, and you look at a state like Kentucky that's growing, Andy, and you talk about, young families trying to move here to take advantage of our economy that's growing. And how long are they now going to put off starting families when they look at just the sheer cost of housing and what it takes to start?
And in Kentucky, it's still more affordable than just about anywhere else. I still remember a business owner who's looking at potentially moving his headquarters here. said, you know what I love about Kentucky? My workers own their own homes. They go home after work to their own homes. That's part of the American dream, that you can buy a home and make memories with your families, but everywhere across this country, it's getting tougher and tougher.
And you wonder if that dream's going to be delayed, right? Based on some of the conversations we've had. I think we probably all remember the first house we were able to purchase and how exciting that was, and nerve-wracking at the same time. I can't imagine coming out of college now and even in Kentucky, seeing the prices of some of these houses. It also makes me wonder, are all my daughters going to live with me forever? Which is a bit terrifying.
Just help them with that down payment. I think about, I really love that you pointed that out, because that's an important moment in your life, owning that first home. It's also terrifying,
Right.
because it's the biggest debt that you've ever had. I remember getting the legal documents for my first one, and they were all wrong. And I sent all the changes in, and I showed up for the closing, and none of it's had been corrected. I almost lost my mind, and the closing agents almost quit. But that idea that you could provide, that you were making it. And I just can't imagine right now being a young couple that can't afford a home, and it's maybe 5 years after their parents could afford a home. Part of that American dream that drives you is you should be able to do at least as well as your parents, and that's not about being competitive. That's hopefully about, families getting better in each generation.
I don't even know if when we got out of college, one of the things, and we got a job, we right away let's go get a house. Like, we were thinking that was a thought process that we had. Now it's let's go see what we can afford to rent.
Yes.
And availability too, by the way.
Yes.
I think there's blame to go around. I think that there have been policies that some blame on Democrats, but I think could apply across the board on supply, on too many difficulties in building new homes, affordable, mid-level, what have you. But on the other end, tariffs are making this problem a whole lot worse. Everything that goes into building a home now has a tariff on it. Everything inside the home, from the furniture to the cabinets, has a tariff on it at a time when it's already too tough. This is just making it that much more difficult.
Speaking of tariffs, this Wednesday, I think the Supreme Court will hear the arguments on whether or not the sweeping tariffs are legal or not.
You made a good point earlier that I'd love for you to explain. You said you think this is going to come down to politics or law, and which one wins the day?
It really is fascinating, because at one point, I think we were talking about hearing Trump showing up in the courtroom.
Yep.
And I feel like the legal issue is pretty narrow. Like, if you follow the law, the answer is that he should not have the spending power that Congress has.
And certainly
but
not unlimited
unlimited, right?
Power.
But here, there's going to be a lot of pressure on these justices to rule in a certain way, and it's going to be really interesting to see if they follow the law.
Well, it's like the tariff against Canada. Whenever there was a TV ad that came out that he didn't like, I automatically decided we should add more tariffs.
That is another example that ought to make this, I think, legally an easy case. That he's just very honest about why he's imposing tariffs. But while he is being honest, he is giving an honest reason that can't be used as the reason for tariffs. A commercial you don't like is not an emergency that allows you to impose a tariff. A prosecution in Brazil is not a reason that allows you to tariff. And I was just reading about the pressure on coffee right now, that most American companies that import from Brazil are running out of their supplies, and the price of coffee is starting to spike. I can't live without coffee.
This can be
I think that's everyone else too. But we also have major retailers around the country that are going to have really difficult decisions of, do you eat some of it? Do you eat all of it? What's the margin on each cup of coffee? And what impact does that have?
Another big issue we should talk about is the redistricting going on. I think Ohio, Indiana, Missouri. Again, we've talked about this before. Where does it end?
Virginia now?
Yeah, Virginia, Illinois.
Wow.
The pendulum will just swing back and forth. Where do you guys think it ends, or how does it end?
Yeah. I think at this point, any state that thinks they can redistrict, that's able to do it under law, is at least going to take a look at it. I don't think that it is great for democracy, but again, you can't unilaterally disarm. I think Democrats learned a lesson after Citizens United passed, when Republicans started taking dark money. Democrats said, oh, we're too good for this, and they lost a number of races and then started taking dark money. The rules are the rules, but if something good could come out of this, what I'd really love to see is an amendment to the U.S. Constitution on how we do redistricting. Think about it. The same set of rules would apply everywhere. Hopefully it would be nonpartisan in the way that it's done, but I think the only way that happens is that I think the party that started the redistricting ends up paying a price for it, that the American people say, wait, this is not how it's supposed to happen, and we'll change the way we vote because we don't like you changing the rules.
Well, this becomes part of the practice for politics, depending on who's going to run in what given year and who has control of the redistricting maps is going to change who's going to run and their odds of coming out ahead.
And it is interesting. I think that it was a nonpartisan commission in Ohio, and it was a unanimous agreement to redistrict. But then I think I read that Democrats said it could have been way worse, so we weren't letting this go to the legislature.
Yeah, so Ohio's redistricting I followed. In the best scenario, you don't redistrict. You wait until that 10-year period when you're supposed to do it. And you certainly don't do it at the call of a president that says, wait, I'm going to lose control of the U.S. House of Representatives. Let's cheat. Let's change the rules midstream. But we did see some folks step up and say, why don't we try to find an agreement since we know this is going to happen? I will give him credit. Mike DeWine pushed for a more bipartisan agreement. You actually see a number of Indiana Republicans right now that are saying, we think our maps are fair and we don't want to change them. And I think you've got to respect that.
I think some of these states like Indiana, I don't know that they have the votes to redistrict in the legislature. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
It would be interesting to see a couple of them fail and then see what impact that has on the others.
Listen, we had a former guest on this show.
Yes, we did.
Yesterday, make his first start in the NFL. Did any of you guys catch Tyler?
I did. I got to watch some of it.
I caught the highlights. Tyler Shough, veteran of the Andy Bashir podcast, is the first guest to ever throw an NFL touchdown.
And listen, as the game progressed, got better and better. Played a really tough team in Los Angeles. But I will tell you, he did an amazing job stepping in and really, really playing at a very high level.
I just think about how he's a great human being. His wife is a great human being. They got a great dog. I'm rooting for him.
And listen, he was so pumped that you made him a colonel.
Yes.
So I heard about it last
Colonel
week.
Shough.
Then the other thing I think we have to talk about, and I hope video is added. Can you please tell us about your Halloween costume? And just how you picked this particular
Mr. Rogers himself,
character.
Well, during Halloween, I want to find something that's fun, but that's also positive. And so last year I was Ted Lasso, trying to get everybody to believe. This year, I decided to answer a call, I think that goes all the way back to the pandemic, and that is to be Mr. Rogers. During the pandemic, I think my daily updates were viewed as calming, and I realized I wore a red sweater way too often in them. It was a quarter zip that I've been told to burn. And so when...
You did not.
No, I still have it. You know I don't throw out clothes. I'm way too cheap for that. So this Halloween came up, and there was an opportunity for it, and I jumped. It went a little bit viral. Now, the very first take, they wanted me to sing. And I tried, and I got halfway to the stage and just said, I cannot do this.
Where is that take, John? We need it.
Oh, that blooper is out.
It exists
right now.
I love it.
It's a beautiful day, and I can't do it. I can't do it. I'll hum it. I just sing so badly. I can't do it.
That's great. Then I think lastly, we need to talk about the passing of a former governor.
So we lost former Kentucky Governor Martha Layne Collins over the weekend. She's our first and only female governor. which is really important. You know, my daughter can look at the portraits of Kentucky's governors and see somebody that looks like her. She was also impactful until the Blue Oval investment, which I was able to bring in, the investment that defined 30 years of economic development in Kentucky was Toyota putting its largest manufacturing facility in the world. It's still the largest manufacturing facility in the world today in Georgetown, Kentucky. It was the first North American plant. I actually remember it because my dad was lieutenant governor at the time. It is hard to describe how big that investment was for Kentucky.
Yeah, what a tremendous leader. The more I read about her, the more fascinating it is. And you're right, what an impactful person on this Commonwealth.
Yeah, and her legacy will be felt
Yeah, she was
for years.
both nice and tough, which is an example that I think is really important. And she probably had to be tougher than she should have been. I mean, you think about, it's hard I think people are too hard on women candidates right now. That they judge them much more harshly. Imagine running in the 80s and what Martha Layne Collins had to put up with, but she pushed right through it, and then had a great reputation for doing international economic development work for the Commonwealth years later. Supported me, which I'm grateful for. Still had a good relationship with my family. Know her son Steve, who's involved in historic preservation in Kentucky, but she will be missed. Just thinking about her family and thinking about her legacy, that hopefully gives all the rest of us in government in Kentucky just a push to be that much better and to continue to recognize that legacy by trying to provide for our families today.
Well said.
And now, in my Kentucky accent, a segment where I talk about what's on my heart and mind. I believe that healthcare is a basic human right, and I have seen the power of healthcare coverage firsthand. I've seen the expansion of Medicaid in my state, where we went from one of the highest uninsured rates to one of the lowest. I've talked with people who had contracted cancer, who were kicked off their healthcare coverage, claiming it was a pre-existing condition, to get that coverage and become cancer-free. That is the power of healthcare. It's also a part of my faith. Jesus said a doctor is for the sick, and you can only see that doctor when you have that healthcare coverage. Yet what congressional Republicans are doing right now by refusing to extend the supplemental tax credits on the Affordable Care Act is going to make healthcare out of reach to so many Americans. Listen, we are already facing potential devastation in rural health care. The big, ugly bill is going to cut over $1 trillion of revenue in primarily rural health care, where the number one cost is personnel, doctors, nurses, people who work to keep you healthy. And now, on top of that, there are going to be people that could see a doctor, and those healthcare institutions would receive that coverage rate of insurance that now are not going to have it at all. Why can't we, as both Democrats and Republicans, agree that a healthy population is important and no one should needlessly suffer? There is still some time, up to December, for congressional Republicans to extend the ACA credits. They should, because if they don't, Democrats, Republicans, independents will all suffer. We're better than this. They ought to take that vote. As we close out this episode of the Andy Beshear podcast, it's the return of one of our favorite segments, Gen Z Lingo. We are joined by Do It for the Plot herself, Lila Beshear, returning. What do you have for us this week, Lila?
Okay, so instead of the normal Gen Z lingo, we're going to do a pop quiz today. That's what the white
We never
points are
agreed
for.
to this.
No.
So we are doing a pop quiz on...
On previous Gen Z lingos, and to make it harder, all of the answers are from other episodes.
Okay. Well, I think I was here for most of them. Probably
Okay.
all of them.
So we're going to have 5 words and ABCs to each of them, And
Multiple choice.
Multiple choice. And what you think the answer is, you'll write it down on your board. And we'll keep score, and there will be a winner at the end.
I'm ready, and I'm
Okay.
competitive.
Yes.
So,
let's
from
go.
the first episode, we have skibbity. Is it A, awesome, B, an overall feeling or mood, or C, good?
I am so ready for this quiz.
Ready?
Yep.
And so we
Let's
will
see.
turn. I say C, good.
Listen, let me tell you why I said A. Okay, because I think of skippity and fire when you're comparing the two, and I feel like fire is even better than awesome.
What's better than awesome?
Great.
Is he trying to convince his way to the right
I
answer?
think he is.
Like,
Okay.
Listen.
John and Dad both got a point. John 2,
Oh.
not John 1.
Oh,
C
so
was the
disappointing.
correct
Wow.
answer.
I hope your legal arguments are better than that.
Oh, so disappointing.
All right.
he tried to talk himself into the win.
Why don't each of you put a tally on your board?
Yes,
All right.
ma'am. Okay, so it
Okay.
is 1-1-0 on the Andy Bashir podcast.
Ugh.
But we all know the three of us are losing, and Lila's absolutely winning this segment.
Okay. It's time for Dad's favorite. From the second episode, we have Do It for the Plot. Does it mean A, writing a story so it works with the plot? B, doing something and not caring how it turns out? Or C, a silent applause?
Oh.
So down with this quiz. This is the modern day SAT.
Okay. Let's see those boards.
I said
Oh
B.
my gosh. Everybody got it right. Good job, guys.
Well,
I almost put C.
I think you
came
taught us
close.
well.
I thought about it.
Remember, the theme of the Andy Bashir podcast is we definitely did this for the plot.
We couldn't get
And
that
now,
one wrong.
Sirius XM Radio.
We couldn't get that one
The
wrong.
plot's good.
Okay. Our third word is from the 5th episode, and it's bet. Does bet mean let's do it? B, physically betting on something? Or C, agreeing with someone?
Ooh.
Oh, this all of a sudden got difficult.
Oh, man.
All right. Are we ready, gentlemen? This is when it starts to get tough. I went C. Both Johns went A.
The Johns got it right.
Oh. Somebody.
So John, too, you
with
have,
the lead.
You have a 1-point lead.
Look at that.
Apparently-
I was close to C.
Apparently, I need to pay more attention to the Andy Bashir podcast. Remember, if you download it 2 to 3 times, you probably get each of these questions right.
Okay. Now, from episode 13, we have goated. Does it mean A, being the greatest of all time? B, you have a lot of goats? Or C, description that something is the best?
I really want to say you've got a lot of goats. I know that's not right, but that would be some of the best Gen Z lingo. Be like, hey, bud, you got a lot of goats. I don't really know what I'd be saying to somebody.
Ready?
All right,
Ready?
here we
All
go.
right,
I'm going C.
You were the only one that got it right. The answer was C.
Oh,
Wait, greatest of all time?
John McConnell,
Well, it's
I'm coming for
loaded.
you.
Oh, go
Oh,
in. Well,
And John
E.
Rabinowitz, have you made an episode?
yeah, I got one right.
You've been virtual a
You
little
got
bit.
2 right.
2 right.
You have 2 tallies.
There we go.
All right.
Okay, the last one. I chose a very special episode. This was episode 23, where we were in New York.
Can you all believe
That was-
we can pick from over 30 episodes? Episode 23 was special.
Yeah. Our word is aura farming. Does it mean A, being a part of a group, B, suspicious, or C, doing things to be cooler? All right,
All right.
let's see.
I went C.
I went C.
John went
Why
C.
do you have
There you go, Lila. Just mine might be a better answer.
I mean, bribery.
John McConnell is trying to buy off my daughter. Impossibly.
What do you mean?
Impossibly.
She can check the answer and hold it.
The worst
Okay.
example.
I think C is
The
underneath the
correct
20.
answer is C.
Oh,
Let's go.
Which means Andy won.
the winner
Oh, well,
of the Andy
that's.
Bashir
Come
The winner
podcast.
I feel like it was
of
rigged.
The first Andy Bashir Gen Z Lingo podcast quiz
We tied.
Is Dad.
Dad.
You might think that this was rigged, and you'd probably be right. But hey, it's called the Andy Bashir podcast for a reason. We hope you all enjoyed this episode as much as we did. We got to have a little bit of fun with the words at the end, but hope you got a lot. out of the interviews. And remember, we'll be back next week with episode 32. We'll see you then.